Hello and welcome to episode 104 of Toward a Better Life. This is Kevin Pennell. Toward a Better Life podcast features like-minded people sharing their stories, ideas, and activities on what we can do to generate a better life individually and collectively. You can share your prose, your music, your poetry, your storytelling on the show too. Just send them to me, Kevin at towardabetterlife.com. And if it's an audio file, just send it to me as an MP3. Please follow and subscribe to the program if you haven't done so already. The show is dedicated to spirituality, self-development, and self-care. Don't forget to leave a review on Apple Podcasts too. It's a chance to tell me what you think, and it also gives an opportunity for others to discover Toward a Better Life as well. Today, I want to just make a mention that Jenn Johnson is going to be joining me. Jenn has been an ER nurse for about 16 years in Canada and has found intuition to be a real asset in her career. She's written several books that support nurses, regardless if they're veteran nurses or just beginning their career. She also has some workshops here and there that she teaches. Jenn Johnson learned more about intuition after listening to what her body was telling her. After years of nursing in the ER, she started feeling about what was going on with her patients before the tests would clearly show the diagnosis. In this episode, Jenn shares some of the science behind intuition and how she started relying on her own experiences when caring for her patients. Stay tuned now as Jenn Johnson tells us about a nurse's intuition on this episode of Toward a Better Life. Hi, Jenn.
How's it going?
It's going. So Jenn is, she's a writer, but her main, her day job, we'll say, is an ER nurse. But if you go to her website, I'm just going to say it in the beginning, if you go to her website, you're going to get knocked off your feet by all the really cool stuff she's got up there. And I see that it looks like rxforgrowth.com. Is that the correct thing, or do you also, did I miss something? Okay, so
there was nursejenn, JENN.ca, but that will redirect to the new website. Finally figured that one out.
So rxforgrowth.com. Yeah, okay, good. And we'll review that again when we get to the end of our time here together. But Jenn, why don't you give us a little background about Jenn? We know that you're an ER nurse, but you're also a writer and you like to share a lot of really cool stuff. So tell us a little bit about Jenn.
Yeah, so I'm an ER nurse of 16 years, Hamilton, Ontario currently, but have been Northern Ontario, Southern Ontario, from ERs as small as just me for the whole department to trauma centers, stroke centers, pediatric emergency departments, all the like. I just kind of flit around sometimes until I find one that I like. So yeah, have worked crazy all the time, and working COVID, getting burnt out, and not knowing if I was going to survive or not. I ended up starting to write some stories for my kids about the good stories from nursing that I thought, if I don't make it, how do you explain to two very young children that mom chose to continue to go to work? And so that's the stories kind of started to come out that way. And then very quickly, the trauma and the stories that I hadn't really dealt with, I've just kind of shoved down deep, brought those up, started working through them, started, outlining them in more detail. And when all these stories came out, I kind of took a step back to be like, I would love to put these into a book, but what do you do with this? And so I was listening to Llewellyn Publishing, who's a big metaphysical publisher in the US. Yep. They were doing online book fairs at the time. And so the one author, she was talking about her book that was Intuition at Work. And she was talking about, and I'm like, intuition at work? I use my intuition every day at work. And it was that click of like, oh, okay, this is what I'm supposed to be. Let's go back. And so going back through the stories and looking at them a little bit more deeply and going, oh, I was using my intuition through every single one of these stories, whether I realized that it was happening or not, whether I said something or not, whether I was believed or not, and the outcomes associated with each one. So trying to put that all together and going, okay, like, we talk in the ER sometimes 3 in the morning when the ghost stories start to come up, and then intuition and trusting your gut usually comes up. But it's a very, it's a quote unquote kind of woo woo practice that nobody really wants to put a lot of faith in other than those who are very experienced. Went back again and I said, well, I can't really put this out there because it's, August of 2020, the misinformation, disinformation, everything that was going around. I'm like, without any science, I can't willingly put this out there. I would potentially be putting my license at risk. So went online, did a huge deep dive into intuition and science and psychology and physiology and all these different things. And what I found was not only is there so much peer-reviewed science-based information on intuition, but also very specifically intuition in nursing. Looking at all that and putting it all together, going, okay, well, if that's all there and it's all science and it's all backed up and it's new and all these things, I can put this out there. I can kind of put all this information together, kind of like I'm writing an APA essay all over again and put it all together and then share my stories along with it as to like, here's all the times that I didn't trust my intuition or I did and what happened and how you can kind of start to trust your own gut and bring it forward and speak to those others and start teaching it also, because we really should be at least talking about it in nursing school, if nothing else, just to introduce the topic and let people make their own decisions after that. But really, it's there. It's absolutely supported by science. And anybody who has worked more than 5 years will tell you that there's absolutely an element to either trusting your gut. The physicians usually call it the spidey sense, or that just that general feeling of not, there's something missing. And how am I going to make sure that my patient doesn't suffer for that?
So spidey sense is acceptable, but don't use the word
Spidey
intuition.
sense is acceptable. I
Okay,
don't.
so we're going to go with Marvel, but we're not going to go with
Shocking.
yeah.
Absolutely shocking. We're not going to go with the female, high based, trust your gut or the creep factor. We're not going to go with that, but we'll go with spidey sense, and that's an acceptable
Mm-hmm.
terminology.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, okay.
Right?
Right. I've been reading a book on English magic for
Ooh,
a little bit, and it is the history of the old line magicians and wizards and witches and people of
not
that
a
nature.
Cunningham's, is it?
I don't know. I'll have to look at
Ooh.
who the author. The
Yeah.
author is Philip Carr-Gomm, who was the former archdruid of Obod, which is the order of bards, ovates, and druids in England.
Mhm.
And he does quite a good job. He actually took over from Ross Nichols, who was the
Okay.
archdruid for many, many years. And now Philip just stepped down, but one of his books that he wrote a while back was on this. And it's a fascinating story, and my brain is just going there because I was just reading some more stuff this morning, and there were a group of people called cunning people. And this term is no longer used.
Mhm.
But these were the people who used the talents that they were given at birth. And I believe that we all have these abilities. I believe that we
Yeah.
all have intuition, but it's like, uh, I'll do something really simple. How many times have we heard, well, it's just like a bicycle, you know,
Yeah.
you get on it and you ride, you remember how to ride. Okay, great.
Yep.
Um, well, let's take that bicycle analogy and let's move it over into intuition.
Hmm.
If you don't use it, you lose it.
Absolutely.
Very simple. It's still
100%.
there. It's still
Yep.
there. But if you don't lose it, you're not, I don't know if I would say you're going to lose it because that has the intimation that you're never going to get it back again. I believe
Yes.
you can, but
Yeah.
it's just a matter of going to the gym of intuition and using it on a regular basis, and you're able to differentiate between this is a good feeling that I've got from this. This, on the other hand, is balderdash.
Yeah.
And you're able to tell what's the difference in the two. And you're able to
Yep.
define, okay, this is right, this isn't. Because why? And I'll use the other term that we all are so familiar with. In my gut, in my spidey sense,
Yep.
I sense that this is the way it should be. And you're mentioning that it's like 5 years before someone is actually able to get this in nursing. Or you did it. You said it was 5 years for you, and I'd
Yeah.
be willing to say it's probably pretty close to that for others as well. So w- you did your studies, you did your
Yeah.
work, you found out you weren't insane. Uh,
Truly. I mean,
so
on the face value of not being sane.
so how would you tell a young nurse who's just, she's just out of he or she, they're just
Yeah.
out of nursing school and they do sense stuff.
Yeah.
How do you explain to them, and I know that you have a book which was uh nursing, I had it written
Intuition.
down, nutrition.
I heard you say that. I was like, oh, that's going to be fun.
Yeah.
I'm like, I'm
Nu
crap with nutrition though.
nutrition intuition.
Ooh, intuitive eating. We could go down that side pathway.
But this the it's nursing intuition. I'll get my
Yeah.
mouth right. How to trust your gut. So let's talk about that book and let's begin the process, if you don't mind, to talk to those nurses who are new to this, or maybe the nurses that have been doing this for a long time, but they're afraid to talk about it. So where do we go from there?
So first and foremost, you're right. Absolutely everybody has intuition. Females especially, only because we tend to use it more often than men. Everybody knows, the creep factor. You walk into a room, you're introduced to somebody, and you're just like, ugh, I don't think so. And you get that's the gut feeling. That's just an
Mhm.
immediate, kind of thing where you're making an assumption or a conclusion about somebody without having any information, and you're
Hmm.
just going with it.
Hmm.
So women tend to know that feeling as more of the creep factor feeling than anything else. But when you take it into nursing, it's more, I just have this sense that something is not right. I've got my patient and I've heard their story and the vitals are okay, but I feel like there's just more to the story, either more to the story or they're sicker than they seem, or there's just, one piece of critical information that I'm just not getting. And so by I mean, the hardest part is truly just realizing that it's happening, getting that sense and actually giving it 2 seconds of your time versus just flinging it off and, oh, that's silly. Where would I come up with that? And just putting it off. If you're giving it the 2 seconds, congratulations, you're already halfway there. The next half is just figuring out what you're going to do with it. Are you going to say anything? Are you going to do nothing? Are you are you going to, just keep it to yourself and go, okay, well, I'm just going to keep an extra close eye on this person. I'm going to do their vitals more often. I'm really going to be extra thorough with them. Or are you going to go even further than that and then either talk to a charge nurse, another nurse who's been there quite a few years, or are you going to the physician to say, hey, I don't know what's going on. I've just got this gut feeling that something is missing. And I want your opinion. I trust your opinion. I'm bringing this to your attention so that you can also have that extra little sense that something more is going on. And
Hmm.
by doing all of this, we're actually just advocating for the patient. It's just another way to advocate for the patient. And that terminology is highly accepted by the medical profession. Oh, yes, we're advocating for our patient. Yes, that's what we're supposed to be doing. So in doing this, it's just a matter of, trusting yourself, trusting that, you do know what's going on. You do know that maybe there's more information that you're kind of getting that you can't put your finger on and it's not technically tangible just yet, but why not trust it? And so again, in doing all the research and the readings, so if you're a newer nurse, you've got this gut feeling, you're going to talk to your physician. The physician says, okay, I'm going to come and see them. They come to see the patient. Well, congratulations, your patient's actually not as sick as you thought they were. So the physician says, yeah, no, everything's fine. We're just going to continue as is and walks away. Even that physician, just having that extra touch point on that patient still improves patient outcomes. So
Okay.
no matter what, you can practice and be wrong, and your patient's still going to have an improved outcome due to your putting yourself out there, trusting it, and moving one step forward. So
Well,
there's no loss.
So the patient is experiencing a placebo effect, and I've been reading that lately too. And there's
Oh, the
becoming
placebo.
a
I
lot.
love the placebo effect.
There's so much to be said for it now because before it was like, well, you got a sugar pill or you got a diet pill, one of the two.
Yes.
And
Yes.
and they're just kind of discounting, it's a placebo. No big deal. It's a
Nope.
placebo. But
Yeah.
now we're saying, oh, wait a minute. So if the recipient is experiencing a placebo event, I'm going to say,
Mhm.
it has a tendency to change their whole persona and it can actually begin a healing process within their being because we're showing that we care.
And we're being extra cautious and people
Hmm.
feel comfort. So there's actually a lot of studies on hope also. People having better outcomes if the physician gives them bad news in a hopeful tone versus just a neutral tone.
Yeah.
There's so much information on that. So I'll plug a book, Why Woo Woo Works. Is one of my most favorite books. I'm listening it in audiobook and he goes through it so fast and so quickly and covers so many topics. But it's another way to support each other in learning that there is more going on than just what you can see and touch and feel. Like there's just that little bit more. Because how, the whole human experience, working with death this often and this closely, how can you not come to terms with the fact that maybe there's just a little bit more magic happening in the world than we want to see or are ready to hear about, kind of thing.
So this is coming up to me now the third time in my head, so there must be a reason
There you
for it.
go. Third
Um,
time.
the what do you do with documentation and when you refer to intuition? Because if I'm going to play the devil's advocate here and say
Absolutely.
something to the effect of, if you talk about an intuitive thought that you
Hmm.
have, it's going to be considered as subjective. It's not going to be
Absolutely.
considered as objective. So
Yes.
how do you put a subjective piece into an objective medical record? Or do you even?
You don't. Typically
That's
we
the point.
don't. It's just, you've done your vitals, you can put in a little note to say patient seems, in more pain, patient seems more unwell. Um, or you can just document, writer is concerned for patient wellness.
There you go. Keep it.
MD consulted, MD states no new orders received. Off you go. You've covered your behind and really you've done the things. Have I ever seen an intuitive thought in charting? No. Would I love to? Sure. But the sensible, logical part of me goes, please don't do it, only because if there ever is lawyers involved, they're going to tear you to shreds.
Yes, they are.
So let's not even go there. If you're concerned for patient well-being, chart that.
Yeah.
If you're concerned that there has been a change in status or change in vitals, chart that.
Hmm.
Chart the absolute, objective things that you can repeat back in court and be like, no, there was a change in the patient's color. There was a change in the vital signs. There was a change in patient's cognitive status. And that's what I was going on. Because more often than not, it's not that you're seeing a patient and they look absolutely fine and you're getting like, I don't know, there's always something else to go with it. Their color's off, they're nauseous, their story doesn't match what's physically going on, or the story's got high flag risk factors for more internal injuries that we can't see immediately.
Yeah.
So go to those. Always go to those. Just because you're using this skill as an adjunct doesn't mean that we're not relying on science 100% to start.
Right.
This is just, again, it's another skill that's an adjunct.
Yeah. And that's the point to make
Yeah.
precisely. And I
Yes.
agree totally that we don't have the same necessarily heavy guidelines in massage, for an example,
Yeah.
that you would in medical, but we're still told, and I share because I instruct this stuff myself, that you have to stay objective.
Mhm.
You can put in suggestions, you can
Yes.
put in plans, patient
Mhm.
plans, future plans, stuff like that, but you cannot put in, I just think this person needs, well,
Yes.
I
Yes.
think you just crossed the line.
No, yeah. It's patient preference. And yours is a little bit more focused than ours, right? Where the
Hmm.
patient's coming to you, paying money out of their own pocket potentially, and saying, my right shoulder hurts. I need to go do something about that. And so if you veer off of the right shoulder and they've only got, that half an hour, 45 minutes, and they're like, no, 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 I told you the shoulder. Like, and you're like, oh, but there's something in the back. I mean, I'm sure you could, as it's been explained to me as I'm having massage and they're going to my back. I'm like, no, 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 my neck. They're like, no, 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 it's all connected. Don't worry about it. And I go, oh, okay. Because again, I'm not the expert in that field. So I trust the people who I'm going to say, oh, if you're thinking that working on this area relates better to this area and we can have an increased blood flow or flexibility or whatever, absolutely go nuts. Like you're the expert. Who am I to tell you only stay on the shoulder? But that's
Yeah.
just me.
Yeah. So staying with the idea of intuition, I just wanted to put that little piece in there to remember what you're working with and who you're working with when you're doing this sort
Hmm.
of thing. And it's okay to look at the adjunct, and it's okay to do that. And you might use terminology that might help you to remember. Oh, I remember this situation now because I said this, 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 and this. And those are almost
Yes.
indicators to me to say your intuition was working. And
Yes.
and I've done that with massage. And it just tells me, okay, I know where I'm going now. Because
So what do you chart?
yeah, I would put in stuff like applied heat, and I think it would be like, um, did heated neck traction to release levator scapula appeared successful? There's the operative word.
Yes. Yes.
Or I applied various Asian techniques to facilitate the necessary increase of range of motion. I
Yeah.
just now you would understand that, right?
I would understand that. I'd go, oh, okay, I see what you're doing there.
But you don't
Whereas,
know what I mean.
yes, yes, I could guess,
Yeah.
right?
Be
And
because
and and all
I
that.
could have done, I mean, an Asian technique that I do is called gua sha.
Oh, I love
And
guasha. Yeah.
and gua sha, you have to be really careful with that because
Hmm.
and I don't arbitrarily do stuff like that to somebody without really having a little talk with them first, but that you're going to have a bruise for 3 to 4 days and
Yes.
that type of thing. So I use little lines that will help me to remember, but at the same token, I'm staying objective.
Yeah.
And it's a fine line, but stay there. So
Yes.
let's go back to the intuition part and say that when I'm working with intuition, um, I'm wondering how much of it could relate, I'm going to say, to the fight or flight mode within
Hmm.
us, because that's the gut.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yep.
So do you think it's the
What
fight or flight mode that's being initiated?
I think it's a little bit of survival, right?
Hmm.
So
Yep.
a little bit of survival, a little bit of fear absolutely could kick you into the fight or flight because, you're walking down the hall and you see a patient who immediately your gut's screaming, "Oh my God, who is this patient? What is going on? What are we doing?" Because they look awful. Like they look like they're going to code within the next hour. And so you're going, and you're just stopping dead in your tracks. And I've done it before. And so I'll go back into the room and I'll be like, who's taking care of this woman in the hallway? Like, what's like, I hate to kind of be a bother, but like, what's going on? Give me the background, give me like a quick head to toe of what the heck's going on because she looks horrible and there's way more that we're missing. And she looks like she's going to code. And so that, oh, yeah, yeah. And you'll get this kind of report and you're like, okay, well, I'm just going to move them into recess because we've got a recess bed. And there's a lot of superstition also in nursing, especially emergency nursing or critical care, where you're going, if I just put them in recess and I have the code cart right there, we should be able to ward off whatever Murphy's Law is brewing because, Murphy's Law, whatever can go wrong will. So you're just trying, and it's a way to critically think also. Let's just have everything ready to go. We'll put her on the monitor now. So that's more monitoring. We can do blood vitals more often so that we can make sure that we're not going in the wrong direction kind of thing. And so it's just kind of a way to critically think as well as just like when you're getting it, go with it. And the other thing is so the studies while looking at them, especially the nursing intuition, they were commenting that those who work critical care, so ER, ICU, step downs, that kind of thing, where you're encountering more adverse outcomes more often and faster, they say that we actually use our intuition more and lean on it harder because of the simple fact that we don't have time to talk ourselves out of it. And so we
Mm.
go with it without even second guessing. And so by us doing that, by us being exposed to it more often, we're working that muscle more and then can really go with it. And then we're talking to our colleagues also to be like, oh, have you seen that woman in the hallway? Like she looks awful. I think we need to like get go again. Yeah, yeah, yeah. More people look at her, go, oh yeah, no, something's really wrong. Like let's move her in. So then you're getting confirmation also when other people are also kind of confirming that yes, their gut's also screaming at them the same as mine is about the same person or patient.
I think you just answered the next question that I had, and that's part of how to trust your gut.
Yeah,
And sometimes it's a collaborative thing. Other
very much so.
times is when you are trusting your gut, when you make the move that you are sensing that you need to quote quote do something. When you make
Yep.
that move, and all of a sudden that sense within you shifts because
Hmm.
you're going in the right direction now. Does
Yeah, and
that
then all
make
of a
sense?
sudden that feeling lets off.
Hmm.
All of a sudden, when you're starting to move people and you're in the zone, the adrenaline's pumping, you're just starting to go. All of a sudden that feeling goes instead of, you've seen that patient, you go to the doctor like, hey, I really need you to see that. The doc's like, I'll get there when I get there. And instead of going away, that feeling amplifies. And all of a sudden you're like, oh, you can't sit still. You're irritated. You're just like, something needs to happen. So as an emergency nurse, you tend to go, okay, what can I do within my medical directives ahead of time to at least get something going? Like I'm absolutely going to put in an IV line or two. I'm going to get some blood work going that fits within what their original complaint was. Um, if there's any imaging that I can get done that's again within the directives, let's do that. But like I'm going to hang a bolus. I'm going to get things ready to go because guess what? This person's going to crash. And I hate being caught with my pants down, especially when it's preventable. So we're going to start going. Like, let's get things organized now.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So that's a process.
Yeah.
And for the person that has never done this, I would say, and correct me, please, Jen, I would say go with it.
Yeah.
And if it turns out inappropriate, if it turns out you're wrong, the world will probably not come to an end, but just don't overcommit yourself. If you're working from your intuition for you're just starting out with this, don't
Yeah.
overcommit yourself. Have someone, just like Jen has said, that is available to bail you out, so to speak, and
Yep.
help you through that process. A senior nurse, a charge nurse, a
Yep.
doctor, whoever, even another nurse who maybe just have a few more years with than you do.
Yep.
And what do you think, kind of a thing? There's nothing wrong in asking questions. In my estimation, and correct me again, Jen, in my intuition says if I have an intuitive thought about something, and if I don't do it and something happens, the guilt is unbelievable.
Oh,
And you do have to
you
go
want
through, you need to cleanse yourself from this guilt. And that's a whole nother program.
that's a whole other,
Yeah.
if you even come to terms with wanting to get rid of the guilt. Some of us really lean into the guilt to be like, yes, I made that mistake. I need to live with it. I need to be punished. I need to, you go down that shame spiral of,
Oh, yeah.
that kind of thing. But yeah, the guilt about trying to advocate for somebody, trying to figure out what's going on, trying to do things ahead of time and not having either enough time or something else. It's really hard to, lose a patient to begin with or have a bad outcome to begin with, let alone if you had the niggling sense of intuition that I should have been on there faster. I should have done something sooner. I should have advocated harder. I should have, I should have. It makes you feel like complete crap, you then are discrediting yourself because, well, like nobody's listening to me. Just because nobody's listening to you doesn't mean you're wrong. It just might
Hmm.
mean that you're short-staffed, that the physician doesn't have time, that there's something more critical going on, that that's where everybody's attention is. It does not mean that you're wrong. It just means in this moment, nobody has the capacity to deal with it. So you're going to have to hold on for just hopefully only a couple of minutes, sometimes an hour or two. But you need to understand that, keep asking questions, always keep asking questions. We continually are bouncing ideas off of each other all the time, especially the ER and ICU, where you're like, hey, I'm not quite sure about what's going on with this blood pressure. Like, I've already got one, medication to help bring the blood pressure up, but it's not quite doing the job. Like, do I just continue to increase on the one, or do I add a second pressor in? Like, what am I thinking is going to happen? What outcomes do I want? And then how do I go and speak to the physician about this to be like, hey, and I don't know if it's just a female thing where we feel like we have to be kind of like coach, like just like a little bit demure and kind of quiet about our thought processes. But depending on the physician, if I don't know them, I come in when I'm asking for something, especially relating to intuition, to be like, hey, I'm Jen. I'm the charge nurse, and I'm just looking after this patient. I just don't know. Like, I just feel like something's a little off, and I'm just, yeah. Could I do something? Could I not? What do you think? And putting it back on the doc, but being kind of very a little wishy-washy at times about it, just to have it kind of received a little bit better. Because depending again on your doc, some of my docs, I come in hardcore and brash and be like, look, the 1-in-1's going to die. I need you to get in there this instant. I'm not joking. Put down what you're doing right now. I need you. That I can do because I know my docs. Some docs will not respond to that at all. You need to learn to read the room a little bit and go like, okay, how am I best going to convey this message? And and so then you're kind of tailoring the message a bit to who you're speaking with. So, is it my ER docs that I know? Is it somebody new? Is it just another nurse? You're tailoring how you're speaking to no matter what, get the message heard as best it can be.
And you said three little words that
Oh yeah,
summarize a lot of stuff. And that
I
is
don't
when you
know.
go into a situation, no, when you go into a situation and you're not sure exactly what's going to happen here, first thing that you want to do is I'm going to add one piece, and that is breathe, take a breath,
Yes. Oh,
and
I forget about
read.
breathing.
Yeah, I noticed that. Uh, but read the room.
Yes.
I mean, what do you feel? You know what this person needs. You sense you know what this person needs. There's something that just isn't quite right there. I need or it needs or they need to be addressed as soon as possible. The only people I know about are in the next room or they're over here behind the curtain. And where do I go from here? You walk in there and just read the room first. Don't
Hmm.
go in there. I'm going to use the term half cocked
I was
because
gonna say guns a-blazing.
yeah, and because that's not going to get you anywhere. This is just human relations.
Yeah.
Read the room, breathe, read the room, then make a statement. If it's somebody like Jen is saying, if somebody you need to get in here, you just need to
Just
do this. You
stop.
need,
Just
yeah,
go.
yeah, just get over there. But if it's somebody you don't know, then it's a completely different room read.
Yes. Instead of
Then
being rude, you have
yeah,
to cool it.
yeah, yeah. So it's just some interesting things to think about. So we're talking about a lot of stuff here between the nurse and other nurses, the nurse and the doc. But what do you wish the public knew about the ER when they are in there? Because, sometimes I, it's a shit show. Sorry, there's no other way to put it.
Absolutely. There's no
And
other
and
way of saying
and
it.
you don't know what to do, where to go, how to do it. So what do you do with the person that the public, they have their loved one in there
Hmm.
and their loved one is in a mess right now.
Yeah.
So what do you kind of wish that person knew?
Yeah. Know that first and foremost, we're putting your loved one first. So I know it's uncomfortable and hard and really off-putting and upsetting to not know what's going on, but we're not updating you because we're so busy stabilizing your loved one. We're trying to figure out what's going on. We're trying to get some tests done. We're trying to be able to give you answers by the time we go back and talk to you. Because if we're coming back and talking to you and saying, well, we're not sure what's going on, that's also upsetting, right? And we know this. You know, if we've got a quiet room, like a lot of hospitals have quiet rooms where we can put families who are waiting for updates on family members who are critically ill. We will try to do that. Some places don't. So unfortunately, you do wait in the waiting room along with everybody else, and we are sorry about that. Um, but we're doing our best. And if there's any one way to quickly crack through a nurse, and especially an ER nurse's skin, because we tend to put up barriers, we block and we put on our shield because we can't be accessible emotionally to everybody. It's just you can't do it. So we put on the shield, we block you off, and we put you at arm's length. The quickest way to get through that and to get really truly honest answers is to ask the question, if this was your loved one, if this was your father, if this was your uncle, if this was your sister, what would you do? Or what
Mm.
would you expect? And that very quickly, one, gets us out of our head. It kind of goes, you're like, oh, so now we're putting ourselves in your shoes, and it gets us out of nurse mode into family mode. And so by doing that, we kind of go, okay, but I'm still a nurse in the background. So what I can say is, you know, your loved one's very, very sick, and we're trying our best, but it may not, you know, death may be coming, and we're very sorry about that. We do need you to be prepared. We do need you to call extra loved ones if they're in the immediate area. You know, if this was my dad, yes, I would want everything done, but there is a point at which I would rather have him comfortable in a bed, surrounded by loved ones, playing music, you know, pain well controlled, hundreds of family members in visiting, you know, not the too restricted to the bedside kind of rules, you know, but that comes with palliative care.
Mm-hmm.
That comes with, you know, reaching the point where we're not going to push with very advanced methods of resuscitation. We're not doing CPR. We're not going to break the ribs. We're not doing intubation, so the tube down the throat. We're not going to do that. We're not going to put them on a ventilator, knowing that potentially due to their age or their comorbidities or whatever's happened, that they're not going to come off the ventilator. And, you know, you want to talk moral injury in nursing, working the ICU and having to watch patients waste away, having bed sores, being in pain constantly, being stuck on a ventilator the entire rest of their life, which may be 3, 6, 9 months, years potentially. That's also heartbreaking. So sometimes the decision needs to be made that yes, we will deal with this pain right now, but you know, we will keep that patient as comfortable as we can, but we're going to take on that emotional pain sooner rather than later, instead of prolonging it and carrying that weight with us for, you know, potentially years, and then still having that patient die, and having that patient be uncomfortable and all these other things. So, you know, palliative care shouldn't be a scary word. It is, but I tell a lot of people there's a lot of comfort to come with palliative care when you can provide somebody with not only a dignified death, but one free of pain and worry and that kind of thing, and where the family can come in at all hours and do all the grieving that they want, you know, supported with us, and we will support you through that for sure. But it's very hard as a family member to come to those terms. So asking the nurse, if this was your loved one, what would you do, may get you some very brutal answers, but trust me when I say we're coming from a place of love, because we've seen it on both ends, those who choose palliative care and they have a comfortable death versus keeping them alive for months and months on a ventilator. They're never awake again. They're never alert again. And then they just waste away. And it's so horrific to watch. And it's, you know, watching the family goes through that is just, it's one of the worst things. So asking that question can actually prepare you for what's coming a little bit sooner than anything else.
So asking the question, what would you do if that were your loved one, is one
Yeah.
piece. The other piece is the takeaway from this is to understand I'm going to say 80 to 90% of the people that are in that medical unit do really have their best interest of that patient in mind at that given
Yeah,
time.
yeah.
And that percentage can vary only depending on what's the current staffing like,
Mhm.
what is the current mode like that you're trying to
Yeah.
deal with. There are factors in there, but above all, if you look at those two things, and those are great bits of advice, Jen. That's what I think people need to hear. And if you were to have a short little bit here for someone that's thinking about A, being a nurse, and B,
Mhm.
being an ER nurse, what kind of words would you give that person?
First and foremost, welcome. Please, we're trying to get away from the really crotchety ER nurse stereotype. We're sorry. We're really sorry ahead of time. But for those coming into nursing, when they called us heroes during COVID, we weren't the heroes. Those coming into nursing when the pandemic was going on full force and chose to come into nursing. I was just showing up to a job I already knew, but those who are choosing nursing and choosing to come into this chaos at the peak of everything, you guys are the heroes. And you
Mm,
guys are bringing with you so much change. You don't even understand. You guys are setting boundaries, you're making changes, you're making your voices heard, and we need you. Also, if you're not loving it, if you do not love nursing, that's okay. There are a million other jobs, a million other tracks to go down. Nursing, if you're not in love with nursing, you might just want to walk away.
mm,
Um, Third is burnout is not a one and done. It is a constant up and down roller coaster ride where you just need to start understanding where the lows are starting to happen so that you can stop them before they go to full burnout mode. And get not one therapist but two,
mm.
in case the first one is busy, because what we see and deal with on the daily, nobody should see and deal with on the daily. And that's not to say that every ER is the same. Some are busier than others, some are more critical than others, some you're bringing patients in versus sending them out. Um, Everywhere has their ups and downs, has their pros and cons, as with every single job. But if you can find a team that you love and you just also then happen to do nursing that you love, man, it's amazing. It's
Right.
absolutely so incredible. And yes, you do trauma bond and you find your lifelong buddies out of these jobs, but nobody understands better, right? So just know that it is a lot of work. It is a lot of stress. It is a lot, but when you get those small wins, when you first start, you first advocate for your patient and somebody listens the first time you get that IV on the first time you change a bed with a person in it and you do it in one go, those are the little wins that we forget about when we've been in it too long. But please celebrate those wins because the little wins are what makes a career.
Nice. Wow. That's a mouthful.
Right? Did I breathe? I don't think I breathed.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Don't forget to breathe. Uh, so, Jen, what does Jen do to create a better life for herself? She's pretty active and doing a lot of other things, but what do you do to decompress? What do you do to feel good about yourself and all that kind of good stuff?
I love to write. I
Mm.
really do. And so writing has turned from, you know, I forgot about it in university just because they really beat the love of writing out of everybody when you have to write paper after paper after paper. But finding it again and finding things that are for me has been absolutely wonderful. The mind shift of, you know, being a good nurse is sacrificing yourself for the others. Do not do this. Please do not do this. Nursing can be a calling. It is not always a calling. I fell face first into it. I never once wanted to be a nurse, never aspired to be a nurse. Um, it is a career. It is a career like any other with ups and downs and good and bad, but no other career are you expected to give all of yourself for somebody else and leave, and you're only a good, nurse or teacher or whatever if you leave nothing for yourself, and you can't operate like that.
Mm-mm.
It's time we kind of start changing the narrative about what it actually means to be a good nurse, because to be a good nurse, you're on time and you show up, but you also take care of yourself. And so when you're having a rough day, you can call in sick, and please call in sick. I would much rather have you be at home resting and recuperating, either mentally or physically or spiritually, than coming into work and really just digging yourself a deeper hole.
Mm.
I,
Yeah.
spend time worrying about yourself, because really, if we took even 1% of the amount of care we give to others and actually applied it to ourselves, we would be in a much better position
Mm-hmm.
as a whole.
Yeah.
So it is not selfish to put yourself first. And, it's not selfish to think about yourself first and foremost before picking up that shift, before doing extra work that work is asking you to do. Oh, we just want you to join this committee. Are you kidding me? You can't even, have bare minimum staff at work, but you're asking me to do more and come in on days off? I'm really sorry. I don't think so.
Good.
Do not feel bad about being part-time. I am part-time. I am loving the fact that I can pick up when I'm feeling well enough to pick up. Also, if you've got union contracts, learn them, because where I am, if you're part-time and you pick up every weekend, the next weekend's time and a half. And then you pick up the next weekend, that's time and a half. And then you pick up the next weekend, time and a half. So all of a sudden you're being paid $75 an hour when base pay is like 50.
Okay.
So makes those shifts, and they always need people on the weekends and night shifts and all that kind of stuff. So work smart, not hard, and do not worry about putting yourself first, because if you were to die tomorrow, even on the ward, they're going to post your job posting before they post your obituary, if they post
Mm.
your obituary.
Wow. Okay.
I've
So
thought
to
about this
get,
just a little bit.
I see that. So if anyone wants to connect with or check out some of the books, she's got on the first page here, I see journals to help heal. And trust me, folks, there's a litany of books there that you could look through to help. And one of them even caught my eye. Where is it? New Nurse Bundle. And I can't even imagine where that one goes. Sure I can. So, but all you do is go to rx4growth.com, and you're going to connect with Jenn Johnson, who's been my guest today. Jenn, this has been fabulous. Thank you ever so much for sharing your heart, sharing your thoughts, and sharing your intuition here on Toward a Better Life.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been a blast.
Thank you for sharing your helpful insights into a nurse's intuition, Jenn. You can find out more about Jenn Johnson through her website, rx4growth.com. That's rx4growth.com. A link is available in the show notes of this episode, too. And for future reference, Jenn's going to be joining us again in the near future to share another very important facet of her life, her deep connection with earth-based spirituality. You won't want to miss that one, trust me. If you're seeking insights and advice on how to create a better life for yourself, please visit my website, towardabetterlife.com. You'll find all my Toward a Better Life podcasts there, and you'll also find some blog entries and ways to enhance your spiritual journey, information about classes, and I've got a class that's going to be coming up. I'll have details on the website pretty soon, but it's a workshop that's going to be held in Maine later on in the spring, as a matter of fact, about mid-spring. So let's just leave it with that. You can also get a copy of my book, Two Feathers Spiritual Seed Planter, through my website. And I do offer virtual and in-person sessions. Just write to me, Kevin, at towardabetterlife.com for the details. Please subscribe and follow to the program through your favorite podcast platform, and be sure to leave a review on Apple Podcast. It helps the podcast more than I can say, and it allows us to reach more and more people, which would mean the world to me. If you have any questions, or if you want to share your story, music, or prose, and if it's an audio file, just lend it to me. Send it to me as an MP3. If you want to be my guest, same goes. Just write me, Kevin at towardabetterlife.com. And until next week, enjoy your journey toward a better life.